I came across an autobiography written by my father for my brother, my sister, and I when he was around my age. I'm going to be 75 next year. And what I found fascinating about it was his history shows that nothing much has changed over the last century. So I'm just going to read some excerpts from it and you can draw your own conclusions. My father's parents' last name was Sorokin. He was born in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. His parents immigrated to Canada. So for immigration purposes, they changed their last name to Castleman, which was the name of his grandmother's family. Now, for some reason, the name ended up in their passports as Kisselman. They came to Canada in 1923 aboard the ship Andania. And again, for reasons unknown, probably for acceptance purposes, shortened their name to Cass, C-A-S-S. In 1936, here's where similarities start to pop up. The polio epidemic caused schools to close in Toronto, where they lived. And my grandfather, who was a doctor, unable to practice medicine in Canada and had become a school teacher instead, uprooted the family, took everyone to Regina, Saskatchewan. Anti-Semitism then was endemic, and it was difficult for them to find acceptance in the community. Ringing a bell? The market crash of 1929, followed by a grasshopper plague and a prolonged period of drought, drove many farmers to march on the capital, Ottawa, to protest government inaction to stimulate the economy. Again, sounds familiar. Now I'm quoting here from my dad's autobiography. Young men, mostly starting in Vancouver, climbed aboard flat cars, they had no trucks in those days, box cars, etc. of a freight train, leaving Vancouver and going east. In each city through which the train passed, more young people would climb aboard. The Canadian government sent the RCMP to break up the assembly. Although unprovoked, the RCMP rode in on horseback with clubs swinging and bashed in many heads. Somewhere along the line, a gunshot rang out, and soon the RCMP were firing into a totally unarmed group. Several young men were killed, and the demonstrators scattered. Such authoritarianism, writes my father, was accepted in those days, and the government was never brought to task for this horrendous act. Unquote. My conclusion? Nothing much has changed in the last 100 or so years. Anti-Semitism is once again rearing its ugly head, and the government in Canada is still as authoritarian as ever. Remember the COVID lockdown and how severely the lockdowns were? Which is why my entire family, pets included, all drove down to Florida and stayed in one house, 12 people, 3 cats, and 3 dogs for 5 months. The trucker protest in objection to forced vaccinations was met with the same thuggery by the government and the RCMP. And to date, no one has been held accountable and likely never will be. History repeats itself. I hold out hope that at some point this current Liberal government can be defeated and that a Conservative government can be put in its place and bring back some sanity to our country. But it's quite an eye-opener to see that despite the fact that we were, most of us, product of a very peaceful time and unaware of all of what was sacrificed on our behalf to give us the freedoms that we take for granted today, history does tend to repeat itself, as you can see from what I just read you from my father's life, and that's just a short excerpt from what he wrote regarding his service in the military, etc. Anyway, for those of you in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you in the next one.